Welcome to Mental Fitness Fridays, Your Ability to Pivot, Part 2. And coming off of what I was sharing last week, I was excited to be able to also share with you some stories of mine. And one in particular that really just brought this concept of pivoting to mind. And it's something that I can see in ways that maybe I didn't name it as that back then. Um, but really, I could have used this concept more back then. And with that, I'll go over one more time kind of what this concept of pivot means, right? And I think I shared last week that really what it means is, for me at first, it is this moment when I hear pivot in my mind, a moment to breathe, a moment to tell myself that I'm okay with what's going on right now, to tell myself I'm doing the best I can, and then allow myself to see some positive movement, to recognize maybe that small step that I can take. And so just this idea, right, of pivoting, and we talked about too as well, just how it to me was really kind of like this basketball player, right? Grounding yourself and an ability to see options even amidst times where you feel that trapped, you feel that lack of options and that fear that can come up. So let me share a little bit of my story and bring that to you. And so for me, this one actually I realized was a part of life for me back in college, and really a moment in time for me that was a difficult time. Was my sophomore year in college. And so just to paint a little bit of the context, I was in college, I was playing baseball, and I had actually had a successful freshman year as a closer on our baseball team. And was excited for the next year to come up and see what we were going to be able to do, as we had come up off of a playoff run. And so as the next year, my sophomore year, was happening, it just wasn't that year. We were struggling, piling up more losses than wins. We realized we were going to miss playoffs. And as the year was coming towards an end, I got kind of the message from the coach, say, hey, you're going to get some innings in today. You're going to play just to kind of keep things going. And as I was in that game, I actually, at the second inning of me throwing, ended up tearing my ligament in my elbow. And that led me to that year, my sophomore year, being done. It led me to surgery because it ended up being Tommy John. And if you're a baseball fan or have played, that one's kind of familiar. But right, it was a big deal, for me. And what ended up happening at that time was I realized that my place on the team was in jeopardy. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time, right? This is the end of my sophomore year, and I had been able to secure a scholarship for those 2 years. And as being a scholarship athlete, I was telling myself, okay, I think I'm going to be okay to be able to sit out the next year, my junior year, redshirt, be able to come back and be able to play. And, we'll just keep moving, from there. And I was feeling kind of some of that hope as we were going in to the end of, again, right, my sophomore year. And until I got a call, from my coach. And I remember it was walking up to his office, opening the door, sitting down, and I could kind of tell there was a little bit more tension than usual in the room. And I recognized as he started to say things that this conversation was going in a different route. It wasn't a, hey, let's figure out our plan for next year and your recovery. It was, unfortunately, we're going to have to take your scholarship away. We're going to have to cut that. And as he said those words, my mind was going. right? It was elsewhere. I think there was moments where he was saying other things of options like, hey, you could stay on the team and you could try and figure it out. And we could go from there. But in my mind, it was, I'm done. My year is done. I am done with my team. And I could possibly be done with my whole career as a athlete, as a baseball player. There was a lot that was going through my mind, and I was for sure at that overwhelmed place. Because getting something cut like that and then losing a lot of, I think in that time, my social support, right? My team, it was stripping of my identity. And I felt that hopelessness during that time. And what I really recognize in those moments is being able to practice and have something like this concept of pivot and being able to pivot a part of my life could have really helped, right? Like it just could have helped in so many ways. And one of those ways was really in those moments of overwhelm, of feeling that hopelessness and feeling like, hey, wait a second, maybe I can take a little breath here. And at the time back then, I mean, breath work was not a thing for me, was not a practice. But what I could have done is maybe had some of that breath a little bit, stopped a little bit of that overwhelm, and instead been able to say, I'm okay. I'm okay. Even though inside my body was going crazy, telling me I'm not okay. The future is done. My life as an athlete is over. And instead of hearing that, I could have paused that, told myself I'm okay. And then I could have piggybacked that, right? Off of, man, I did the best I could because I was taking the message away that I wasn't good enough. Right after getting that scholarship cut, that was the message that it told me is I'm not good enough to be a part of this team. And it really led me to saying, okay, then I'm done. I can't be a part of this team anymore. I got to go. I got to leave. And instead of maybe telling myself that message, right? I did the best I could. I'm doing the best I can, allowing for me to make maybe that next step as well in some of that positive movement. Maybe hear a little bit more of what my coach was saying in regards to plans to stay. Maybe there would have been some financial options I could have explored a little bit more. But ultimately, for me, it was hard. It was a time where I struggled. And I know that this concept of pivoting really could have helped. Now, for me, I ended up making that decision to come back home, attend a college there where they just started a baseball team. I ended up being able to recover and go through that process, which is a story for another time as well. And ended up being able to throw again and play with another team. And so I see back then there may be some of these moments of being able to pivot. And yet I could also see in that time where things felt hopeless, that I felt trapped, that I really felt like none of this was my only option was to get out of here and to leave and try and start something over again. I felt like I could have been able to explore something different. And so it's one of those things I look back at now, and I recognize and in some of this process of mental fitness, it's something that is more of a practice for me now, right, than it was back then. It's something that I identify now. It's something that I talk about now more, right, with, myself, with others. And it's something that I can look back now in certain situations and be like, yep, man, that could have helped. So I hope as well, as I'm sharing that story, as maybe there are, whether you as an athlete or in other areas of life, you just recognize that trapped and hopeless, that you can maybe take a moment and remind yourself of that ability to pivot, that you're okay, that you're doing the best you can. And with that, you might be able to find some small steps of positive movement to where you want to get where you want to be. So that's it for today's Mental Fitness Fridays. Again, I hope you find it in that way helpful and encouraging. And I'd love to hear your feedback. So whether that's comments on YouTube or comments in other podcast platforms, being able to hear those, I think there's really a mental fitness community that's out there, and one that's wanting to connect and really be able to share these amazing ideas that I know have helped me, and I've seen help in others as well. And so with that, I hope that you can continue to be curious, stay curious without judgment. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey through mental fitness stories with John Steele. If you resonated with today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform of your choice. Remember, your story is important, and so is your mental well-being. If you have a personal mental fitness journey you'd like to share or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, reach out to us on social media or through our website. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, expert insights, and practical tips to help you cultivate a resilient mind. Until next time, take care of your mind, nurture your inner dialogue, and prioritize your self-care. Remember, you are not alone, and your mental fitness and well-being is worth the investment. Thanks for being a part of the Mental Fitness Stories community.